You know, it's so interesting how you can have like two sources on the same topic, like the same person,
Right.
and they're totally different. Like you sent me this really short thing on Queen Elizabeth from, the royal family's website, and then this massive Wikipedia page. So I get the feeling that we're really trying to get in deep here, like beyond just like the, Virgin Queen and the whole Spanish Armada thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what's so fascinating is that contrast, right? You want to understand Elizabeth as like this major historical figure,
Right.
but also, the woman behind the crown.
Yeah, exactly.
Human being.
Like what was she actually like, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm game. Before we get into like Elizabeth herself,
Okay.
let's rewind a little. England in the 1500s. Paint us a picture, like what was going on?
Okay, so think like total turmoil. England's on the verge of like religious civil war.
Oh, wow.
They're still reeling from Henry VIII's whole like break from the Catholic Church.
Oh, right. Henry VIII, he was her father.
Exactly. Talk about a tough act to follow, right?
Yeah, he wasn't exactly known for being, what's the word, subtle.
No, not really known for his subtlety.
Yeah.
But Elizabeth comes in and she not only takes the throne, she rules for over 40 years.
Yeah.
And like the fact that she brought stability during this crazy time
Right.
is incredible.
Okay, so let's get into her childhood then. I mean, you highlighted a couple of things in the Wikipedia entry that you sent.
Yes.
And it sounds like there's a lot of drama early on.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, declared illegitimate at age 2.
Right, 2 years old.
After her mother Anne Boleyn is executed.
That's a lot.
That's a lot for anyone, let alone a toddler.
Yeah, imagine like the psychological impact of all of that. So it's no wonder that she later becomes known for being so cautious and careful with her moves.
Yeah.
Because she had to be.
Yeah, I mean, talk about shaping a worldview, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
and on top of that, you've got this whole situation with Thomas Seymour, who was her stepfather.
Yes.
And you flag this, and it's a hard topic, but,
It's delicate.
important. We have to talk about it.
Yeah, but the possible abuse that she suffered at his hands just adds this whole other layer, right,
Yeah.
to understanding her personality.
Yeah.
And then of course she's imprisoned by her own half sister Mary.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
So, I mean, talk about your formative years, right?
Yeah.
It really shapes how she viewed the world and how she approached power.
Right. And speaking of power, let's talk about the thing that I think everybody wants to know about Queen Elizabeth, which is why didn't she ever get married?
Yeah.
You even put in here this funny little anecdote
Oh yeah.
about it was the Duke of Anjou gave her like a frog earring,
Yes.
like as a gift.
Uh-huh.
So she clearly, even when she was like feeling the pressure, I guess, still had a sense of humor.
Yes, absolutely. And you pointed out like all of these different suitors, right?
Right. You have kings and princes.
Kings and princes and Habsburg archdukes.
Like, it's a big deal.
It was a big deal. And
Right.
and every single one of them was like this strategic alliance that she could have made.
Right. Right.
That would have solved certain problems but created a whole bunch of other ones.
Oh, for sure.
So it was like this high stakes chess game, right?
It's like, was she even considering these proposals, or was she just like using it as a way to,
Right.
keep her power?
Was it a power play?
Yeah.
And that is like the $1,000,000 question. I mean, historians are still debating it.
Really?
Oh yeah. But here's what we do know. By not marrying, she cultivated a very specific image.
Right. Okay.
The Virgin Queen, dedicated to her kingdom.
So she made it like she turned a personal choice into a political,
Exactly.
a political kind of tool.
100%. And not only that, but think about it. It allowed her to tap into the whole religious fervor of the time,
Okay.
right? She positioned herself as this kind of Protestant answer to the Virgin Mary.
Wow, so smart.
It was a brilliant move.
Turn a weakness into a strength.
Exactly.
But okay, so she's got the marriage thing. At least she's figured out a way to like work it to her advantage, maybe.
Right.
But then there's this other, elephant in the room, which is Mary, Queen of Scots,
Yes.
who you highlighted. Like this was a big rivalry.
Oh, huge.
So what was it about Mary that was such a threat?
Oh, she was a huge threat. I mean, you've got to remember, she wasn't just Elizabeth's cousin. This is like major royal drama. Mary was a direct descendant of Henry VIII's older sister. So that gave her
Okay.
a pretty strong claim to the throne.
Gotcha.
And of course, there were a lot of people, especially Catholics, who saw Elizabeth as illegitimate anyway.
Right, because of the whole Anne Boleyn situation.
Exactly. So Mary becomes this like figurehead for Catholic discontent in England, people who want to go back to the old ways, you know?
So it's not just like a personal rivalry at this point. It's like
It's way bigger than that.
it's a whole like,
It's a threat to her power,
you know,
her legitimacy, everything.
what does she do? I mean, how do you even handle that? Like, you can't just ignore it.
Exactly. And you can't seem like a tyrant. So Elizabeth, she's walking this tightrope.
Oh, I bet.
She has to appear merciful,
Right.
but also like protect her own neck.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the Babington plot, which you highlighted.
Right.
This is where things get real. Like, we're not talking about rumors anymore.
Oh boy.
Mary is implicated in an assassination attempt against Elizabeth.
Wow.
They find letters and everything. Oh, yeah. So it's like, at that point, Elizabeth has to do something.
Right,
It
and-
forces her hand.
And that's why Mary's executed, right?
Yeah, 1587. It's a turning point. Although, even then, it's so interesting that you picked up on this detail that Elizabeth later tried to blame her secretary for signing the execution warrant.
Oh, it's juicy.
So, like, was she having second thoughts? Or was it just a way to kind of like,
Save face.
yeah, with the Catholics? We'll
Right.
never really know, but it just shows you how complex the whole situation was.
Totally.
And, you know, getting rid of Mary, it solved one problem, but it created a whole other one.
Okay, how so?
Well, executing a Catholic queen, not exactly the best way to make friends in Europe.
Uh-oh. This is where Spain comes in, right?
Spain, exactly. It
Yeah.
ramps up the tension, and eventually, well, you know what happens next.
The Armada. Okay, so I'll be honest, this is the part I always get excited about. Like, it's such a story. This huge fleet of ships coming to invade England. And Elizabeth, she's like, bring it on. You even have in your notes her speech to the troops.
At Tilbury. Oh, it's epic.
That's like straight out of a movie.
I know I have the body, but of a weak and feeble woman. She's like, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. And think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm.
Chills. I mean, that's leadership right there.
Totally. You can see why she became this legendary figure, Gloriana, defying a superpower.
Right, but you're saying that even though the Armada was a big win, things weren't exactly smooth sailing after that.
Not exactly. The war with Spain dragged on, and there was trouble brewing closer to home, actually.
Really? What kind of trouble?
Well, you highlighted this thing called the monopolies crisis in your notes, remember?
Oh, right, right. What was that all about again?
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't get talked about as much.
No, it doesn't, but it's super important for understanding how Elizabeth's power actually worked and sometimes didn't work. Basically, to pay for all these wars, Elizabeth started granting monopolies.
Monopolies. So, like, certain people get to control certain industries.
Exactly. So you could give your favorite courtier, like, the exclusive right to make salt or something.
Which I guess back then salt was kind of a big deal.
Huge. But you can see how this might cause problems, right?
Oh yeah, if you're not in with the queen and her friends, you're kind of out of luck.
Exactly. It was good for the queen's favorites, not so much for everyone else. Prices went up, people got angry, and it really tarnished Elizabeth's reputation even as she's defeating the Spanish Armada.
It's like you're trying to fight off enemies abroad, but you've got problems at home too.
Exactly. It's a great example of how even the most powerful rulers, they're not all powerful. They have to answer to the people, at least to some extent.
And speaking of people she had to answer to, what about her advisors? You had a whole section marked about them.
Oh, yeah, the court.
Because I have to imagine it's one thing to rule a kingdom,
Right.
but then managing all these personalities, all these ambitions, that must have been a whole other challenge.
A whole other game. And especially as Elizabeth gets older,
Yeah.
you have this younger generation coming up, all wanting her ear, wanting power.
Oh, I love a little courtly drama. Give me the highlights. Who are the main players here?
All right, so in this corner, you've got Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex. Young, charming, the Queen's favorite for a while.
Okay, I'm picturing like dashing good looks, that kind of thing.
Exactly, and very ambitious. He's pushing for a more aggressive approach to foreign policy, especially in Ireland, which was a mess.
Okay,
And in the other corner, we have Robert Cecil.
all right. Tell me about Cecil.
Think shrewd, cautious, much more pragmatic.
So we've got Mr. Exciting and Mr. Sensible.
Pretty much. But of course, it's never that simple, right?
I'm sensing some conflict brewing.
Oh, absolutely. And it all comes to a head in Ireland. Essex, he kind of goes rogue, makes some bad decisions, disobeys Elizabeth.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Okay, so what happens?
Well, Elizabeth is furious. I mean, this is insubordination, right?
Yeah, not a good life.
So she strips him of his titles, puts him under house arrest.
Wow, she was not messing around.
No, she was not. But even that wasn't the end of it.
So Essex is under house arrest, no more fancy titles. I bet he was fuming.
Oh, absolutely. Humiliated. And remember, this is a guy who's used to getting his way.
Right, right.
He saw it as like a conspiracy, you know? Like Cecil was whispering in Elizabeth's ear, turning her against him.
Oh, so it's all Cecil's fault in his mind.
Pretty much. And that's what leads to this crazy rebellion he tries to pull off.
This is what you were saying before, right?
Yeah.
About him like trying to take over.
Yeah, 1601, Essex and a bunch of his buddies, they decide they're gonna like storm London, capture Elizabeth. Oh yeah, total chaos. They figured they could force her to get rid of Cecil, put Essex back in charge.
That's wild. I mean, what were they thinking? That could never actually work, right?
Not a chance. It was a disaster from the start. Poorly planned, not enough support, and of course, it falls apart immediately.
Yeah, Elizabeth has an army, right? It's not like she's defenseless.
Exactly. So Essex is done for, captured, tried for treason, the whole 9 yards.
And executed, right? I mean, you can't exactly rebel against the queen and get away with it.
Nope. Elizabeth had no choice at that point. Though you mark this in your notes that his death really got to her.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. I mean, she knew him. They weren't close anymore, but still.
It really shows the human cost of power, right? Like, even if you have to make those tough decisions, it still weighs on you.
Totally. No wonder she had a reputation for being so serious and, cautious. It was the tough job.
Absolutely. And it didn't get any easier, especially as she got older. The one problem she could never quite solve was the succession.
Because she never named an heir?
Never. It was like this big question mark hanging over everything. And Elizabeth, she hated even talking about it.
Why do you think that is?
Part of it was like acknowledging her own mortality, Plus, if you name an heir, people start taking sides.
Oh, right. Suddenly it's a countdown. And everyone's trying to, getting good with the next ruler.
Exactly. So she just kept putting it off.
But eventually, she must have had some idea, right? Who did people think might be next in line?
Well, the most likely candidate, and this always throws people off, was James VI of Scotland.
James. As in Mary, Queen of Scots' son. But they hated each other.
I know, right? It seems crazy, but remember, politics can be a cold-hearted game.
So, forget family drama. This is about keeping the country stable.
Exactly. James was Protestant. He was already a king in his own right. He was the most logical choice, even if it felt weird given the history.
Okay, so that makes sense. But did Elizabeth ever actually say, yeah, James, you got this?
Publicly, never. She would have hated that. It would have felt like giving up her power before she was gone.
So what, it was just like an unspoken thing? Everyone just kind of knew?
Pretty much. Though it's interesting you highlighted Robert Cecil's role in all this.
Right? Oh, right. Mr. Sensible strikes again.
He knew Elizabeth would never make it official, so he starts working behind the scenes.
No way. What was he doing? Sending secret letters?
Exactly. Advising James, how to play it cool, how to reassure Elizabeth that he wouldn't be a threat to her legacy.
Wow, that is some serious political maneuvering.
Right. It's all about managing expectations, smoothing the transition, and in the end, it worked. James becomes king, just as Cecil planned.
And Elizabeth, what about her final years? Does she, find any peace?
It's hard to say. We know that towards the end, she withdrew a lot, spent more and more time alone.
After a lifetime of that much drama, I guess I don't blame her.
Her health started failing in 1602. She was in her late 60s, which back then, that was a good long life.
Yeah, especially for a queen. All that stress.
And she lost a lot of close friends. That always hits hard.
It's like she was running out of time, running out of people.
And eventually, she ran out of road. March 24th, 1603, Elizabeth I dies at Richmond Palace. Just like that, her reign was over.
Just like that, after 44 years? Wow. I'm kind of speechless. What a story. You read about these figures in history books.
Right.
And it's easy to forget that they were real people with real emotions, real challenges.
Absolutely. And Elizabeth, she's such a great example of that. I mean, she's celebrated as this icon, this symbol of a golden age.
The Armada defeating the Spanish, all that.
Exactly. But she was also a human being who made mistakes, who had regrets, who felt the weight of the world on her shoulders.
It reminds you that history isn't just dates and names. It's about people, right?
100%. And I think that's what's so fascinating about Diving into these sources, looking for those little details, those glimpses of humanity, it makes the past feel real.
Totally. Like we could have been there, in the room with her, feeling what she felt.
Exactly. And in a way, we are through these stories, through these documents. It's a connection across time. And it reminds us that even though times change, people, people are people.
People are people. I like that. Well said. So I guess the million-dollar question is, what do you think Elizabeth would make of the world today? Could she handle being a queen now with Twitter and, everyone having a camera on their phone?
Oh, man. Now that is a question, and I think I'll leave that one for our listeners to ponder.
Ooh, good one. Yeah. Imagine Elizabeth I with a Twitter account.
The hashtags would be epic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks for indulging my little deep dive into Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to chat history with you.
Anytime. Until next time.
And to our listeners, thanks for coming along for the ride. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on whatever platform you're using because it really helps other history buffs like you find the show. See you in the next episode.